Hi everyone, thanks for coming by, and we're going to spend the next 20 minutes talking a little bit about Nutanix and desktop as a service. So the ability to take that traditional PC experience and deliver it from the cloud or from your on-prem data center, all from the same control plane. So you can access your Windows apps, your desktops from any device, whether that's your phone, whether that's a Mac, a PC, doesn't matter. You can manage those virtual desktops from anywhere and deliver them to any device. So there are also a couple other breakouts that we'll have that'll talk about this hybrid capability of running both in the cloud and on-prem. And you'll see here a couple other sessions as well as a CUBE interview a little bit later on, so you can check us out there. So I'll go over a little bit about who Nutanix is and who Frame is. And Frame is a company that Nutanix actually bought last year. We'll talk a little bit about that and go into a bit more detail on Frame, talk about how you can use Frame in a hybrid environment, and then we'll have some time for some questions. All right, so a little bit on Nutanix. So Nutanix has been around now for 10 years. It went IPO in 2016. We're now over 5,000 employees. We've got over $1.5 billion in revenue, which is one of the fastest growing software companies at that scale, really in the world. We're the market leader in hyper-converged infrastructure. And this is the concept of taking your compute, your storage, and your networking and converging it in your own private data centers to basically let you take advantage of the same principles that AWS has used to build their public cloud. So it gives you this ability to have public cloud scalability and modularity in your data centers in the same way that public clouds were built. And today, Nutanix gives you options to run workloads both in the public cloud and in your private cloud as you grow and scale your business to pick which makes the most sense for which workloads. So virtual desktops are actually part of Nutanix's DNA because one of the first use cases that hyper-converged infrastructure really was great for was virtual desktop infrastructure, VDI. So Citrix workloads, VMware workloads that run in your data center that you want to manage and scale in a very effective way, hyper-converged infrastructure is great for that. And that's really the primary workload that kicked off Nutanix 10 years ago. Now, it's still a very important workload for us, and we do a lot of business together with Citrix and VMware for an all on-prem traditional VDI environment. Now, a little over a year ago, Nutanix purchased a company called Frame. And I'm one of the co-founders of Frame. We've been around since 2013. And what we did is we built a desktop as a service built in the cloud. So from day one, we put our control plane, the thing that brokers all your connections, the thing that automates and orchestrates your infrastructure, we put that in AWS from day one and ran our workloads there as well. So actually back in 2013, it was at reInvent when we launched the company, and that was the same day that the GPU instances on Amazon launched as well. And we launched together with them, and actually our first demo was to take Photoshop and show it running in a browser on any device in the world. And that actually was a first because at the time, to run virtual desktops, you really had to have a client installed on your machine. What we did with Frame was essentially take Windows apps and turn them into web apps. And that's what really got things started for us. So over the years, we've added capabilities such as delivering not just apps, but full desktops, doing persistent and non-persistent desktops in that environment. And in August, again, of last year, Nutanix purchased Frame. And what we added since then is the ability to not only run workloads, those virtual desktops, in the cloud, but also run those on-prem. And so that's what we'll talk a little bit more about as we go through this. So today, what is Frame? It's a secure cloud platform that delivers these Windows apps and desktops to users on any device. And why do you want to do this? Why not just let users run on their PCs? Well, the reality is today, if you look around, people are using many different types of devices, right? And working on many different types of devices, whether that's your PC, your Mac, your iPad, your smartphone. And for IT, managing that environment with all these different devices can get very complex and difficult. But if you can centralize your management and centralize your security to where you're just managing a virtual desktop as IT and giving your users access from anywhere, then you give your users the flexibility of BYOD, but you can also secure your environment and make sure your users are getting the latest version of apps and the rest, and you have a much tighter environment to manage. Now, a little bit on Frame itself. So we built it as a cloud service, and we built it with ease of use in mind. So it's much easier to get up and running and to get started and to scale than if you had to build the entire thing on-prem with traditional solutions. So with one platform and one control plane now, you can deploy those workloads in the cloud as well as in your on-prem infrastructure, all from a very easy-to-use environment and management plane. And you can do non-persistent VMs, which are essentially a shared pool of VMs that your users access. Their specific profiles and preferences get saved separately, but you're sharing a common set of resources to really get a lot more efficient usage out of your infrastructure. And when you're running in the cloud, of course, you're only paying for what you use, which is one of the great benefits. But we can do persistent desktops as well, all from one platform. Again, as I mentioned, this was a platform built for hybrid cloud, being able to run both in the public cloud and on-prem, so you can do things like take your consistent workloads, the ones you know that are going to be the same all year, run those on-prem, and then run your flexible workloads in the cloud. And there are a lot of use cases like this, whether you're in retail and you have seasonality that's peaking right about now, or you're in a school system and you've got a regular cycle throughout the year. You can take advantage of running your infrastructure where it makes the most sense. And the other piece is, given we're a cloud service, certainly in the early days of cloud, back when reInvent only had about 4,000 people instead of, I don't know what it is this year, 80,000 people, something like that. There was a lot of concern about security. And what about security in the cloud? I'm nervous about having my workloads and my data in the cloud. So we, from day one with Frame, made security a top priority. And as a result, I'll share with you a little bit later, but we've got some of the top security certifications out there, and as a result are also in AWS GovCloud and are serving a lot of government customers for whom security is, of course, extremely important. Again, key benefits: simplicity. So you don't need a certified professional to get started with Frame. It's very easy to set up and run, and we'll be happy to show you what that looks like in the Nutanix booth. Demos, really, we can start up a new account, set up your identity provider, connect to wherever your storage is, and spin up desktops literally in a matter of minutes. And that's something that used to take months to do. There are a lot of one-click integrations that we have with other cloud services. So for example, cloud storage, whether it's Box or Dropbox or Google Drive, etc., you can very easily connect to whatever other cloud services you're using, literally with a single click. And similarly, you can connect to any type of identity provider. So whether it's SAML2 or whether you're using Active Directory on-prem, you can set up your users very quickly and easily. And that's really what translates to the second benefit of velocity. Again, minutes, not months. You can leverage the scale of AWS to go big very quickly. And in many cases, we have customers that have projects that from 1 week to the next need to go to 15,000 users. You can do that when you're leveraging the power of the cloud. And then finally, consistency. And this is this whole benefit of virtual desktops that lets you have a consistent environment regardless of what device your user is on and where they're connecting from. So those are kind of the three key benefits of Frame. We can dive a little bit deeper into each one of these aspects of a virtual desktop. So first off, any application. So I mentioned earlier when we launched Frame, we actually launched on GPU instances, and Photoshop was the first thing that we demonstrated running in a browser. And in fact, the way that we did is we showed that we can insert a Windows application into a website. In fact, VentureBeat covered us, and in their article, literally put a running version of Photoshop. And these are things you just normally don't think of doing, but again, it's an example of how we're turning Windows apps into web apps. And that includes any app, whether it's a basic office productivity application, all the way up to a high-end CAD application, for example. And in fact, pretty much all the leading CAD software vendors are indeed Nutanix Frame customers today. Many of these software vendors who've built traditional Windows applications over the course of many, many decades find it hard to simply rewrite those applications, especially when they're GPU intensive, as a native web app. And so as a result, we've become a solution for those software vendors that want to very quickly and rapidly adopt software as a service and deliver their apps into a web browser, and essentially take advantage of the same benefits that a native web app has, but without any rewrite and any new code. So literally, again, any application, whether it's just a client application or even client-server applications that have let's say a SQL backend, that can all be stood up within a Frame environment very easily. I mentioned storage and identity providers. Again, one-click integrations with cloud storage, but you can also connect to your own on-prem storage, which is in many cases still where a lot of data resides. And so this hybrid environment of taking your cloud desktops and giving them access to data on-prem is very straightforward to set up. You set up a VPN gateway and provide access that way. There are also a number of other cloud storage services. I won't list them all here, but we make it easy for you to work with the environment that you have today. In terms of identity providers, if you want to provide access via Okta or Ping Identity or Active Directory, again, those are very straightforward integrations that we have. Pretty much any SAML2 provider is something that we can leverage for identity. As I mentioned, you can run on any infrastructure, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem, giving you that flexibility to balance costs to best meet your needs. And finally, one of the most important things is you can access, again, from any browser. It doesn't have to be Chrome, it doesn't have to be Edge, it can be any HTML5 modern browser today gives you access. And again, that gives your users the utmost in flexibility. As I mentioned, we have a single control plane, runs on AWS, and that takes care of your identity management. It's what orchestrates the infrastructure. It is what brokers connections between end users and their machines. And this is an example of what that can look like. That same control plane can run workloads that are running in the cloud, as well as if you have an on-premises infrastructure with hyperconverged infrastructure in Nutanix, you can also have those workloads running on-prem and actually be able to support both internal and external users on either of those environments. And increasingly, this is what we're seeing happen in the real world, is enterprises have needs on-prem, they have needs in the cloud, and it's a process that's going to have both involved for quite some time. So, it's a little bit on Frame in terms of the overall angle from a CIO perspective of what makes Frame really unique and capable of solving enterprise problems. Again, it's security. I mentioned this before. I mean, we have SOC 2, Type 1 and 2, SOC 3. We've got all the ISO specs as well as FedRAMP, which allows us to run in AWS GovCloud. And all of those security standards that we meet for some of the most stringent security environments out there are also what apply to our commercial customers as well. So all of that work that went into those certifications applies across the board. Second key thing from a CIO's perspective is being able to have lean operations. Again, that simplicity translates into less bodies working on custom things and more users that are happy with a service that was built for this purpose. And in the end, again, leveraging cloud, you get the most efficient as possible use of resources by essentially just paying for what you use. And agility, it is a cloud service. So unlike traditional VDI services where you had to wait for an update for every 6 months, and you had to install, and you had to manage that software. In this case, it's a cloud service. It's getting updated every week, so new features are constantly rolling out, again, as with other SaaS services. So what this means, again, with desktop as a service, you can take advantage of the cloud. You can leverage your on-prem resources as well. You can handle usage patterns that are very variable and just pay for what you use. So one example, a weekly usage pattern for virtual desktops, there's not much going on the weekends, but during the week you're going up and down. Similarly, an annual usage workload looks something like this. Put your consistent workloads on-prem, your variable ones in the cloud. One of the things that we're announcing here at reInvent today is new support for private networking on AWS. And this is an additional step in an additional configuration that you can use when you've got an on-prem environment that is already directly connected to your cloud. So for example, with AWS Direct Connect, you can have your on-prem network routed directly to your AWS account. And many enterprises are starting to use this type of configuration. So as opposed to users coming in and connecting directly to the public cloud, we can now support this configuration where an internal user is actually piping through that direct connect into the AWS cloud as opposed to going straight to the cloud. So this gives you even more control over your networking environment and the security in that environment. And similarly, you can also set up external users to come in through a gateway to get connectivity to that cloud account that is really just an extension of your on-prem network. Okay, so a couple key takeaways. Frame, Nutanix Frame is a fully automated, very easy to use desktop as a service that's built on AWS. It gives you a single pane of glass, whether your users are running workloads in the cloud, on-prem, whether they're persistent or non-persistent desktops or apps. Users love it because it gives them ultimate flexibility in connecting from anywhere. You get great performance because you can run, whether it's a GPU workload or a basic office productivity app. Admins love it because it's really quick, very easy to get started and to scale. And CIOs love it because it checks that security box for them and allows them to support this hybrid cloud environment that we're all finding ourselves in. Now, we like to say that seeing is believing, and the proof is kind of in the pudding. So if you'd like to see a demo, the Nutanix booth is just off in that direction, booth 1207. But you can also just go to the Nutanix website, nutanix.com/frame, and take a test drive. And literally in a few minutes, you can get an account up and running. You can see what apps look like when you're running them there. And that's kind of the best way to experience it, just live. So with that, I'll wrap it up. And if I think we've got about a minute or two. If there are any questions, I can take those now. Otherwise, we can wrap it up.
Anybody have any questions? I can bring you the microphone if you do. Just raise your hand. Going once, going twice. Oh, we got one.
Yep.
Hang on just 1 second.
What? Hi. Do you guys support printing or web cameras and peripherals on the outside for the cloud instances?
Great question. So yes, we do support printing and a number of peripherals. And basically, for example, with printing, we have something we call a Frame virtual printer. It's something you can turn on or off, just like turning on and off clipboard sync and file upload and download from your local machine. Some people want that flexibility. Some people don't want it, so it's very easy to turn that on and off. With a virtual printer, you essentially print to it, and it downloads a PDF to your local machine and immediately brings up the local print dialog to print to whatever your local machine is connected to. In addition, there's other ways to print as well. There's cloud services that let you do that, but the virtual printer is the most common way that we do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Anybody else? All right.
All right. Again, if there are any other questions and you want to check out a demo, come see us over in the Nutanix booth, and really appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Thank you, Karsten.
All right.
And again, everybody, that booth number is 2037 if you'd like to visit Nutanix, 2037.